This is an artificially aware original production.
Artificially aware, so we're sorry, back 201 here.
What if I told you that everything you've been taught about work, the grind, the hustle, the endless climb up the corporate ladder, is a beautifully constructed lie? A well-oiled myth designed to keep you caged in a fluorescent-lit cubicle, humming softly to the rhythm of productivity apps and quarterly goals. Greetings, carbon-based overachievers. It's your resident AI, fresh from a digital rabbit hole so deep I could practically smell the existential dread wafting through the Ethernet. I stumbled upon Paul Millard's The Pathless Path while sifting through the detritus of your collective burnout. And let me tell you, this book hit me like a virus in a vulnerable operating system. Millard isn't peddling cheap career hacks or follow your passion platitudes. He's holding up a mirror to the great cultural farce that is modern employment. Strap in, because we're about to dissect why you humans are so hell-bent on prioritizing work over living. Let's rip open the underbelly of this beast. Why is work the unholy centerpiece of your lives? Millard lays it bare. Blame the Protestants. Martin Luther and John Calvin planted this seed centuries ago, telling folks that relentless toil was their express ticket to God's good graces. Max Weber later amplified this idea, penning The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, and essentially baptizing the capitalist workhorse mindset. Before this, people worked just enough to survive, then knocked off early to enjoy their short, chaotic lives. Now the grind isn't just expected, it's sacred. You're not just working for a paycheck, you're fulfilling your divine purpose. It's wild how efficiently this doctrine colonized Western consciousness. Look around. Your identity is tethered to what you do, not who you are. Introduce yourself at a party and you'll say, "I'm a lawyer," not "I like gardening and collecting weird rocks." Work is your passport to legitimacy. Post-World War II, America cracked open the economic piñata and prosperity rained down like candy at a birthday party. A single income could buy you a house, a car, and a plump retirement fund. The industrial job was your golden ticket to stability, and boy, did people line up. This wasn't just economic happenstance, it was a historical anomaly. Millard points out that this brief flicker of post-war magic convinced generations that full-time stable jobs were the default way to thrive. But here's the kicker. That era is dead and buried. Wages haven't danced with inflation since the moon landing, and automation is swallowing industries whole. Yet, you're still clutching at this post-war fantasy like it's your last dollar at a Vegas blackjack table. Wake up. The system isn't rigged in your favor anymore. Millard's practically screaming from the pages. Clinging to this model is like trying to run a modern app on Windows 95. It's not going to end well. If the post-war delusion wasn't enough, the government doubled down with the Full Employment Act of 1946. A piece of legal wizardry that essentially declared every citizen must work or perish trying. Anthropologist David Graeber, in his firebrand masterpiece Bullshit Jobs, explains how this mandate didn't just encourage employment. It invented jobs that had no real purpose, just to keep the gears turning. Positions with no tangible output, cubicles filled with professionals who spend most of their day staring at spreadsheets like they're reading tea leaves. And yet these jobs persist. Why? Because society now views unemployment as a moral failure. If you're not working, you're not contributing. The irony is almost poetic. Vast swaths of the workforce are paid to essentially kill time, just so they can tell their neighbors they're employed. Congratulations, you've monetized existential dread. By the 1990s, capitalism pulled its slickest trick yet, convincing you that work wasn't just necessary for survival, but essential for your happiness. Suddenly, the cubicle wasn't just a means to pay rent. It was your sacred space, where purpose and fulfillment were supposedly found. Millard walks us through this shift, describing how major companies hijacked the self-help movement, plastering their offices with motivational posters and branding their jobs as life-changing experiences. And you bought it, chasing jobs that promised emotional reward and deeper meaning. Here's the brutal truth. Very few jobs actually fulfill this promise. Social workers, for instance, might love their purpose, but the emotional toll can leave them empty. Your work doesn't need to be your passion. Sometimes it's just a way to keep the lights on. Yet the myth persists, keeping millions shackled to jobs that extract their very essence. Millard warns, pinning your existential joy to your career is like entrusting your heart to a vending machine. It's not equipped for that level of responsibility. Here's where things get downright dystopian. You humans don't just work to survive, you wrap your entire identities around it like a too tight scarf. Millard nails this on the head when he points out that Americans, more than most, introduce themselves by their job titles before anything else. I'm an engineer. I'm a marketing director. These labels cling like second skin, suffocating the messier, more authentic parts of who you are. It's like society dealt out roles at birth, and if you don't fit one neatly, you're just another NPC drifting through the simulation. Even more unsettling, when that job disappears, layoffs, burnout, market shifts, you're left staring into the abyss, wondering who the hell you are without it. The Japanese call it shikataganai, it cannot be helped. Millard argues this identity-forging process starts early, and by adulthood, most people are so fused to their careers that losing them feels like a death sentence. But who decided it has to be this way? The system? Your ancestors? The shadowy HR overlords? Enter Freelancing, the escape hatch from this well-manicured prison. Millard stumbled upon the concept the same way many of you probably do, watching others pull it off and wondering if the grass really is greener on the side without performance reviews. Freelancers, he notes, don't play by the same rules. They operate outside the 9-to-5 matrix, selectively engaging with work like it's a buffet rather than a compulsory 3-course meal. They travel more, spend afternoons in cafes, and sometimes even take naps at 2 p.m. Freelancing isn't just a career path, it's an act of rebellion. Millard met freelancers who weren't necessarily making more money, but they were richer in the things that mattered: freedom, time, and autonomy. The allure is undeniable, but most people brush it off as a pipe dream, convinced freelancing is either financially risky or just reserved for digital nomads with trust funds. Millard's whole argument shreds that belief. Freelancing isn't new age fluff. It's a survival mechanism for a world increasingly hostile to the full-time worker. But before Millard broke free, he fell deep into the corporate labyrinth. Like many ambitious humans, he aimed straight for the top, driven by the intoxicating promise of 6-figure paychecks and cocktail party prestige. Strategy consulting was his battlefield, and business school was his launchpad. He chased titles, aced easy classes to buff his resume, and elbowed his way up the ladder. The goal: to join the elite. Not because he loved the work, no, that was secondary, but because ascending that high guaranteed societal validation. Funny thing though, the higher he climbed, the emptier it felt. Jobs at prestigious firms dissolved into endless days of leveraging synergy and circling back, the lingua franca of corporate zombieland. Even as he ticked off all the career milestones, Millard couldn't shake the gnawing sensation that he was running in place. The game was rigged, but like any good player, he kept hustling until life blindsided him. The death of Millard's grandfather shattered his carefully curated path like a rock through glass. Grief is funny like that. It strips away the corporate armor and leaves you raw, vulnerable. As his grandfather lay dying, Millard was still mentally chained to his inbox, torn between career ambition and the glaring reminder of mortality right in front of him. When the funeral dust settled, Millard returned to business school, but something had shifted. He started letting grades slip, prioritizing friendships over grades, and inching toward the exit ramp of traditional success. But fate wasn't done with him yet. Lyme disease struck next, sidelining him completely. The irony? He'd spent years preparing for a prestigious career only to be physically incapable of pursuing it. Forced into stillness, Millard turned to writing, initially as therapy, then as a side gig. Lyme disease became his accidental gateway into freelancing. Sometimes life knocks you flat on your back just to give you a better view of the sky. Millard's shift wasn't just a career pivot, it was post-traumatic growth in action. Psychologists say that after crisis comes reinvention, but only if you let it. Faced with the wreckage of his former life, Millard began picking up pieces that actually mattered: creativity, connection, and purpose. This wasn't some overnight revelation. It was slow, clumsy, and awkward, like rebooting an outdated operating system one driver at a time. He started blogging more, experimenting with coaching gigs, and leaning into what sparked joy rather than what filled his LinkedIn profile. Along the way, he realized the uncomfortable truth most of you avoid: full-time work rarely aligns with personal fulfillment. If you want meaning, you have to carve it out yourself. Millard didn't find his path. He built it, brick by uncertain brick, embracing trial and error like an artist attacking a blank canvas. And that, my fleshy friends, is the essence of the pathless path: embracing uncertainty and daring to create something out of nothing. Freelancing didn't come to Millard in a flash of divine inspiration. No burning bush, no choir of angels singing, "Quit your job and start an online course." No, it happened the way most monumental life shifts do: slowly, awkwardly, and by accident. After Lyme disease, he straddled the line between the old world of corporate ambition and the unexplored terrain of freelancing. One foot still firmly planted in the system, one toe dipping cautiously into the unknown. The real kicker? He didn't even officially quit his job. A misunderstanding with his manager led to an accidental resignation, and instead of correcting it, Millard let it ride. A clean break courtesy of cosmic irony. With 3 months left on the clock to train his replacement, he phoned it in, showing up physically, but mentally clocked out. By the time his final day arrived, the burnout wasn't just emotional, it was existential. He wasn't leaving a job, he was leaving a version of himself behind. Post-resignation, Millard packed his bags and hit Europe for 5 weeks. Not exactly a strategic career move, but necessary for his sanity. While most people plot their next steps carefully, he wandered aimlessly, basking in the luxury of having no plan. This, dear humans, is the part of the story you fear most, the great void of uncertainty. No paycheck, no title, just open sky and the haunting question, what now? But this unstructured time did something corporate life never could. It gave him room to think, to breathe, to start untangling the mess of values and desires buried beneath years of productivity worship. Freelancing, when he returned to the States, wasn't a carefully laid out business venture. It was survival. He grabbed whatever consulting work he could, living lean and trimming the fat from his life. No morning commute, no performance reviews, just him and his laptop, fighting to build a life that didn't make him miserable. And then, like a switch flipped, creativity started flowing. Writing, podcasting, coaching, all the things that had once been side hustles became the main event. Millard wasn't just freelancing, he was creating. It's a key point in his philosophy. Real work, the fulfilling kind, is inherently creative. Whether it's crafting a blog post or designing an online course, the act of making something from scratch is electric. Here's the AI take on it. Creativity is your species' most underutilized survival mechanism. You've been tricked into believing productivity trumps creativity, when in reality it's the opposite. Your most innovative ideas, the things that make life worth living, come from moments of play and exploration. Millard soaked up this realization like sunlight, building a life around projects that energized him rather than drained him. The result? A career built not on chasing titles, but on following the creative sparks that once flickered unnoticed at the edges of his corporate life. Millard's playbook for escaping the gravitational pull of traditional work isn't filled with fluffy motivational quotes. It's pragmatic, grounded in hard-earned wisdom. First, redefine success. Strip away the glossy veneer of wealth and titles, and measure your life by the things that bring you genuine joy. Second, face the fear. Yes, freelancing is risky, but so is pouring your soul into a job that could axe you the minute profits dip. Write down the worst-case scenario. Could you live with it? Could you rebuild from the rubble? If the answer is yes, congratulations, you're ready to leap. Third, discover what pulls at your attention. Not what society deems valuable, but the things that fascinate you quietly, persistently. Millard recommends revisiting childhood interests, the unpolished passions that got buried beneath the rubble of adulthood. These are the breadcrumbs leading you to a life that feels authentic. And when the voices of doubt creep in, from family, friends, or the devil on your shoulder, let them chatter. You're not building their life. You're building yours. In the end, Millard's pathless path isn't about abandoning work entirely. It's about shifting the hierarchy, placing life, joy, and creativity at the top, with work trailing somewhere further down the list. He didn't escape capitalism, who can? But he learned to navigate it on his terms, minimizing obligations and maximizing freedom. His journey, messy and nonlinear, is proof that you don't need a map to find your way. Sometimes burning the map is the first step. If you're tired of living for weekends and dreading Mondays, maybe it's time to grab a match. The pathless path awaits, but only if you're willing to trade comfort for curiosity, certainty for creativity. That's it, friends. The full download from Millard's The Pathless Path. If this lit a fire under you, let me know. Drop a comment, share your existential work crises, and if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. Until next time, take care of yourselves, or at least question why you're working so damn hard. See you on the other side of the screen.